Hello, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're brand new here, my name is Lachlan, and today's video I'm here to talk to you guys about Elvis and Me by Priscilla Presley. It strictly has to do with Priscilla's love life with Elvis. So like a lot of other people, I went and saw the Elvis movie back in July. I pretty much obsessed over it. I have watched it so many times since then. I ended up watching more documentaries about Elvis, and the first time I watched the Elvis movie, I didn't know that Elvis was 21 and Priscilla was only 14 when they met. So I started looking into it because then I was like, what? She was just a baby, like she was a child. So I started digging around and I came across this book that Priscilla wrote to basically document her perspective of their relationship. And
holy shit,
my mind is like blown with the things that I have learned. So essentially, Elvis, whenever he was up and coming and he started to get super like popular, at one point he was arrested for like his dancing because
the old white people didn't like how he was dancing.
And so they like shipped him off to serve in the military, and he was stationed in Germany, and that's how he met Priscilla. She was 14 and he was 21. I know that back in the day, the legal age was 16, which is still definitely a child, because I've talked to multiple people about like this whole scenario, and I promise I'll get into the book review in just a second, but I've had people say, well, it was different back then. And I've had people say, oh yeah, he was a total predator. So yeah, it was different back then, but it wasn't that different. Like, it was definitely frowned upon, and it's made clear in the book that her being 14 when they met was definitely frowned upon. Nowadays, it wouldn't just be frowned upon, but you would end up in jail. So I'm gonna try and be as coherent as possible, so I have some notes to refer to. Basically, the book starts off very, very sad. I immediately started bawling. Like the first chapter, I was just like very taken over with emotions. It was just so emotional. After it gets emotional, then it jumps back to like when they first met, their progression of their friendship, and like how things progressed into like, is she a friend or is she more than a friend? Like, what's going on there? I tapped quite a bit while reading this. I used my orange tabs for every time I became super uncomfortable or like something really, really cringy happened, where I was just like, ew, this is like giving me the ick. And I used my red tab every time I was like,
holy shit, this is like totally not okay. Like, this is a huge red flag. Like, this is horrible. Like, this is horrible, like actually horrible.
So yeah, I used a lot of orange and red. And orange and red were like, this is really like not okay and what's going on. But she talks about her experiences, and it's just very mind-opening. Like, so many times my jaw was just on the floor. Like, I was audibly gasping. I just felt so, not that I was pitying Priscilla, but I just felt for her. Like, I just felt so horrible for her because she was such a baby when her and Elvis met. Just seeing how their relationship played out, and the mentality of men back in the day. I mean, there's still misogyny today that exists, but like, I know it was way worse back in the day. But just the mindset that Elvis had towards women was just
really disgusting.
Honestly, like, very uncomfortable. Like, just seeing the things that he would say to her, it's just something that if a man ever said that to me today, I would probably throw up in his lap or something. He was emotionally abusive. He was physically abusive at times. It's also just heartbreaking because she fell in love with him so young, okay? And he's this famous guy, and it's just the power that he had, and like, not only his voice is amazing, was amazing, like absolutely, he's like the #1 record seller of all artists ever in history, okay? So that's like a really big deal. But just to know that like behind the curtains, like what was going on behind the curtains, you know, it's just so eye-opening. So let me backtrack a little bit. So while he's stationed in Germany, they're like friends for a couple of months. And then he moves back to the US, and she stays in Germany because she lives with her parents in Germany because that's where they're stationed at the moment. And so she's upset because, you know, she's in Germany and he's back in the US. And so she goes to visit him 2 years later when she's 16. He like calls her. He's like,
hey, do you want to come visit me in LA?
She's like super excited. So she goes and visits him. And while she's there, they go to Vegas and they go gambling. And just the things that happen, that occur, like, are absolutely not okay. Like, at one point, he gives her these, like, uppers. It's, like, ADHD medication. Because they're, like, sleeping all day, staying up all night, sleeping all day, staying up, and she's having a hard time with it. He's like, hey, here's some of these pills. It's like, what are you doing? Like, Elvis, I just wanted to, like, jump in the book and shake him and be like, what are you doing? She's a child. She's an actual child, okay? And now this book was written in, like, 1982, I believe. Let me see if that's right. Okay, so it was written in 1985. There were some things in here, aside from the whole learning about Elvis and Priscilla's dynamic, there were some things in here that really made me be like, oh, that's another red flag. Like, the way that she would say certain things. Like, at one point, they went ice skating, and the guys were, like, playing this game of, I don't know what game it was, but someone would, like, crack the whip. Just in general, like, having a whip while ice skating. I'm probably not explaining this correctly, but it just came off as, like, a really big red flag. I was like, that's just, like, not okay. So I feel like so far I've been pretty negative about the book. However, I did finish it very quickly, and mostly because, like, I was just very invested in learning about how Priscilla felt about the whole situation, that she, you know, she basically grew up with this man. Some of the positives, I think, were that it felt very surreal, like, being in her mind. And also getting to see, like, some of the family events and, like, the family dynamic and stuff. It was just very surreal to see. I don't know how else to explain it. Like, it just didn't feel real. It was just very weird to read about. One funny story that I really enjoyed reading, I actually laughed out loud, was, so Priscilla was really bad at cooking. Relatable. Well, not that I'm bad at cooking. I just don't like cooking. Anyway, so she was bad at cooking, and she tries to make lasagna one day, and she, like, freaks out. She's, like, calling friends to help her make lasagna, and she's going back and forth and, like, makes a big deal out about it. And then they sit down to eat, and she's like, okay, everyone can start eating now. And then she had said that while she was cutting the lasagna, she said it felt like something was weird, but she just thought the knife wasn't strong enough. So they all bite into their lasagna, and they're all, like, crunching, and she realizes that she forgot to boil the pasta. I just thought it was so funny. But she said that Elvis saw that she was, like, about to cry, and that he just dug in. Like, he went and ate that lasagna. He devoured it, okay? This book, it definitely shows the ugly side of Elvis, the side that probably a lot of people don't know. A lot of people might know it. Like, I had no idea, obviously. I was very appalled. But it also does show, like, the good side of Elvis, that he was, like, a giving person. He did care about Priscilla in his own fucked up ways. Obviously, like, he really should have never been with her. He should have never been with her as she was that young. So I just looked up the definition of grooming, and it's actually their relationship, and at least in the beginning, was the definition of grooming, because this is what it says. By definition, grooming is when someone builds a relationship, trust, and emotional connection with someone so they can manipulate, exploit, and or abuse them. That is exactly what Elvis did to Priscilla. It's like, from his perspective, you could say he had just lost his mother, and he was lost as well. Like, he was only 21. I'm not giving excuses. Do not come at me saying I'm not. I'm just saying. He knew that she was too young. People would tell him. Another thing is, like, her parents, they, like, approved of this. But as soon as it started to get too much for them, that's when they were like, why is he interested in you? You're so young and all this stuff. And it's like, well, y'all didn't, like, think about that before they started, like, being friends, or, like, you saw them being friends. Like, I think that Elvis just had, like, this power. He was very persuasive. He was very charming and manipulative. And so, like, he got his way a lot of times because, like, she would say, oh, like, my dad's not letting me do this. And Elvis would be like, oh, let me get on the phone with him because, like, I can try my best to, like, talk him into it. And then he would. And it's like, oh my God, like, what's going on here? So it is quite sad, like, the emotional turmoil that she experienced. But the amazing thing is that, I mean, the sad part is it took her a while, but the amazing thing is that she ends up realizing all of this, and she comes to terms with the fact that like she never found herself. Like Elvis, it says on the back of the book, he taught me everything: how to dress, how to walk, how to apply makeup and wear my hair,
Gag.
how to behave, how to return love his way. Over the years, he became my father, my husband, and very nearly God. Oh my God, if I didn't read the back of the book before I started reading this, because if I had, I would have literally gagged, thrown up, like jumped off the side of the building. Like this is like so just gag worthy. I'm not saying Priscilla's gag worthy. Like please don't think that's what I'm saying at all. Like I think what she experienced is gag worthy. I just hate that she had to experience it, and it just sucks so bad because Elvis's music is amazing. You cannot deny his music is a par above the rest. Like he is literally the king of rock and roll. And there's a reason that he's sold so many records, okay? So yeah, there's that. And it just sucks because, and I know I don't want the Elvis lovers to come at me because look, I still am a fan of his music. Like I'm not going to stop listening to his music. The money that goes towards his estate I think is going towards Priscilla. So if anything, I could be wrong about this, but yeah, go watch the Elvis movie. Go listen to the music. Like who cares? No, but I can still, admire the fact that like I can still admire his voice, and he does have some redeeming qualities. I'm not saying he's like the worst person on earth, but if you're like the biggest Elvis fan, just know that like I don't have any ill intentions. I've literally read this book just wanting to know more about Elvis and Priscilla, and I had actually no idea what I was in for. Like no idea. Like some people are going to read this book and you're going to be like, Lachlan, how the fuck did you even finish it? Because it's like red flag, like all over the place. It's just like the blood that was boiling, the blood pressure that was rising, like it was appalling. I would say, if anything, the first half was the most appalling. And the second half was just more so like she had already become of age, like she had graduated high school. So it was more so like seeing the effects of like how it affected her, because at that point she was grown. And so it was like, okay, how is this affecting her life? She's literally being controlled. Like she's being told how to wear her makeup, how to do her hair, how to walk, how fast to walk, like how to talk. Like it's just, and she couldn't be her own person. And it's just heartbreaking. We know how the story ends, okay? We know how it ends. And you still let it break your heart. Does that make sense? It's like, you would think that knowing how something ends, you would kind of like put your guard up and you'd be like, I'm not going to become emotionally invested in this.
But no.
Completely emotionally invested. Although there were so many things that made me uncomfortable in this book, I don't know what to rate it because it's like, I don't normally read nonfiction like this. I wouldn't say this is an autobiography. This is like her literally telling their story, like their romance story. Some people could look at this and be like, oh, she's romanticizing it. Well, yeah, she's romanticizing it because it was literally her love story with Elvis. So it's gonna be romanticized in some ways. At one point I even wrote in the book like, oh shit, like for a second I forgot that this was a fictional novel and not a romance novel. It says she wrote it with Sandra Harmon. So her and Sandra, they did a good job on like writing the romance stuff, because I was like, that's really sweet. But then I would be like, ew, but he's like older than her. Like it's just, you know what I mean? Does that make sense? So I feel like I definitely just word vomited. Let me know what your thoughts are if you read this book. If you don't plan on reading this book, I totally get it. But if you are a fan of Elvis, I do think you should read the book. Is he glorified? Absolutely. In that, like, but she doesn't glorify him throughout the book. I hope that makes sense. Like, she talks about the truths, and at times I do think that she kind of made things very vague. I hope that she was 100% honest. Like, we can only hope. God forbid Priscilla, I mean, she's never going to see this video, but like, no disrespect on Priscilla. She's just telling her story, and she's doing it with, I feel like, what was, it took a lot of guts to write this, in my opinion, and I respect her for it. She's speaking her truth. I think a lot of people who have just watched the movie and they want to know more, you can totally read this book. Another thing I want to talk about, and then I'll wrap up the video. The movie really made it seem like Colonel, is it Colonel? Is it bad that I don't know how to pronounce it? Colonel. It's spelled Colonel, but I think it's Colonel. Whatever. Yeah. So Colonel, the movie makes him look like the bad guy. When y'all really, Elvis he actually legitimately had a spending problem, and nobody could tell him otherwise. Nobody could tell him, like, Elvis, you're spending too much. You need to not buy that $500,000 ranch house, which back in the day, $500,000 was a lot more money than $500,000 today. And so people would try and tell him, and he was hard-headed, and nobody could tell him anything. And so this was really eye-opening, because it's going to make me look at the movie completely differently. Just because in the movie, I was like, wow, I hate this Colonel dude. Like, he needs to just, like, get GTFO. I don't like him. He treated Elvis like this and that. But, y'all, there are two sides to the story, and Elvis was not innocent, okay? Like, he was a big spender. He was very arrogant. He even had anger issues. Although he was a giving person and he had an amazing voice, and he was talented and hardworking, that doesn't take away the fact that he was all of these other things too. Priscilla was abused, and she had to deal with that, and she had to learn who she was and to find herself. And I don't know, I just have mad respect for it. I think I'm done word vomiting. Sarah, if you're watching this, I'm sorry that I kept... So I have one other friend who was just as obsessed with the Elvis movie as I, and that would be Sarah. I wonder if are you gonna go read the book now? Let me know. If you made it this far, you can leave a music emoji and a heartbreak emoji, because yeah, I don't know, this book is just really heartbreaking and eye-opening. You know that quote, never meet your heroes? Yeah. You're really meeting Elvis in this book. If Elvis is your hero and you want to meet him, read the book. Read this book. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed this video of my word vomit and my thoughts, my feels, and as uncoherent as they are, I just thank you so much for watching. And if you are new, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and give this video a thumbs up. Smash that like button. I'm totally kidding. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.